Business over drinks. Business over drinks. This is Dave and Tom. This is business over drinks.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Business with Drinks. My name is Tang and I'm calling in from Singapore.
Hey everyone, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. My name is David. I'm calling in from Brisbane, Australia.
We actually have a really cool episode. So we got someone who's a second time guest on our show, which is not that common actually. So that means it's pretty interesting and we really feel like we didn't get enough time with him the first time. So we've got Joel Hauer from Whisky Loot. He's the founder and CEO. He started the company in 2016, and he's actually the home for alcohol subscription services. So that's pretty cool. You've got Whisky Loot and Gin Loot under you, which delivers 3 premium enhanced selection whiskey and gin tasters from around the world each month to every single person who subscribes. Right? So it's pretty interesting because I think you specifically designed this to take monthly subscribers on a journey from like novice to connoisseur to kind of help them, help Aussies find their favorite spirit in a kind of a fun and a safe environment versus going to a bar and absolutely destroying their bank account over there. So, so Joel actually comes from the advertising world, and he has his own digital agency before that. So Joel has actually helped a lot of businesses navigate the digital world across basically all spectrums and all fields and sizes. His background in digital marketing and passion for whiskey and gin actually was a match made in heaven, because when you start Whisky Loot, this kind of just all meshed together. Joel, welcome to the podcast again.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Before we kickstart everything, because I know we've got a dozen questions, I know you haven't got that much time. Why don't we share what we're drinking? Joel, why don't you go first this time?
Awesome. I've actually got a box with me. So this is a beautiful piece of packaging in itself. But the Bushmills 21. So this is a recent addition to something we've launched recently, and since we last spoke, which was our advanced playlist. So there we go. It's a bit of a sticky one. So we've got the Bushmills 21. Anyone that doesn't know, Bushmills is one of Ireland's oldest distilleries, and could actually be the oldest distillery. So we're going to give this one a bit of a try. We've got our nice branded Whisky Loot glasses there for everyone to see.
Nice.
And these are the Glencairn glasses that come in a couple of our packs and we sell online. So that's one of my favorite is the Bushmills distillery. So I'm very happy to get stuck into their 21-year-old release.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad now because I don't have anything fancy to open up. But Dave, why didn't you go next, man?
Well, this is for Joel. I'm drinking something from Gin Loot. So I'm drinking Four Pillars. I actually miss drinking Four Pillars. I used to drink it a lot with Tang when I visited in Singapore. So cheers to that.
Yeah, so cheers. Dave and I are actually drinking the exact same thing as well. So because we wanted to make sure that this episode was brand relevant, and keep it consistent. So Joe, we're going to jump straight into it, man, because I think I really want to find out a little bit more about how things are going since we spoke. Because I think the last time we spoke to you was roughly 10 months ago when things were really picking up and you guys were growing at a crazy rate. So how has it been in the last 10 months? Like what's happened? Like what can you share about Whisky Loot in the last time?
We outgrew our warehouse, so that's it feels like we were doing that every 6 months, and unfortunately, when leases for warehouses are a minimum of 3 years, it does make it a little bit difficult. So we were lucky enough to find another place temporarily and kind of expand into that. But yeah, it was very, very busy. End of 2021, we brought on a couple new staff members and started to kind of expand what we're doing from a product perspective. So we had the launch of our advanced playlist, which this Bushmills was in one of those, which essentially 3 more premium whiskies than our Explorer playlist. And for anyone that doesn't know, we call our subscription a playlist because it doesn't go somewhat random monthly, depending on when you sign up. It's pretty defined order to really start you off on the more palatable and the more easy to understand whiskies and build up that complexity and that flavor profile over time. And then we had a killer end of the year as well with our Advent calendars. So they were super popular. and we were in some retailers, some great retailers. So we're in Dan Murphy's. We were in David Jones for the first time, and we were in Qantas on the Qantas website, and we also did a partnership with Amazon. So we're super busy end of last year.
Yeah, just a little bit busy, just a little bit.
Yeah, these warehouses always get overflow, and then we all just sort of run
what a
out of
hard
space.
life.
Dave and I have no experience in that whatsoever.
So, I mean, that is a huge list of successes. But to you personally, Joel, what's some of the big milestones for you throughout all of this?
Well, in the past couple of months, I had a baby, so I had our first little
congrats.
baby. So that was very exciting from a personal perspective.
Congrats, man.
She's 3.5 months old now. So now I have two babies. One's the business and one's a human.
Which one's more important, Joel?
Yeah. Tell us live.
Can't answer that one.
I'm joking. I was
clearly in business
on the spot.
But obviously, managing a business and going through that, massive experience personally, you've got to have a great support network around you, and obviously at home, that's your family and your friends, and a little bit more difficult during COVID, where that they can't as easily come over and visit. And then obviously on the business side of things, an amazing team that can keep the ship moving forward even when you're not there every day, which is super reassuring to have that kind of team that can really back you up.
No, just proper congratulations on the baby. I can see the crib behind you.
It makes so much more sense now. I didn't want to say or judge Joel at all.
Yeah.
I just
I was like,
it's a new baby loot product.
I was thinking, lifestyle's the rich and famous. Like, they do weird shit that we don't understand.
Baby loot, that's a business idea, right?
I just want to, that's definitely a business idea. I'm going to steal that. So, Dave, let's trademark that right after the show. So I just want to take a quick step back, man, because you said that your the gifting season, or especially like during Christmas and everything, was a big thing for you. Can you share? Don't need to go into too much detail, but can you share some of the strategies that you guys are using during these seasons?
Yeah, so the gifting season is super important for us from an e-commerce perspective, and there's a couple of things that we want to do from that perspective. One of the strategies is obviously to acquire new subscribers, because that's kind of our recurring revenue base. But then on the flip side, what we need to kind of do is just continue to capitalize on that market, and the fact that people are buying and will continue to buy at different months. So right now, obviously, everyone thinks of December when it comes to kind of a Christmas or a gifting period. We have a gifting period that goes all the way from the beginning of October to the end of December. So what we've done to be able to make that work is essentially put in products around November that are for the beginning of December. So that's our Advent calendar release. So it wouldn't make sense if you received that on the 24th or 5th of December. That's really more of something to start the month with. This year we launched our Spirits Advent calendar, which was a release that we did on purpose to kind of trial the spirits market. And what I mean by spirits, it wasn't just gin or just whiskey, it was mixed spirits. So there was vodka, tequila, rum, mezcal, all spirits that you can kind of imagine in the one box. And that was really somewhat of an MVP to see whether we could actually do a subscription, and whether the feedback that we got from customers would actually make it worthwhile. Obviously, we're talking with customers all the time and getting a feel of what they say about the product. So it was a bit of an R&D effort of launching a full spirits subscription, and it was the first one to sell out. So we're super stoked with the kind of response on that product. And it gives us the confidence to go and create and invest a lot more resources into creating a full-on subscription for spirits.
Yeah, so launching new products, that's really interesting. Obviously, it's not your only product, but have you found, in your case, is there like a formula to how to launch a product well, especially in a competitive market like spirits?
I wouldn't say there's a formula. I think there are things that you can do, and it really depends on your audience. Something that we've used in the past is kind of a bit of a wait list methodology. So you're asking people to kind of sign up for something that you're giving a bit of a sneak peek of. I think that will work for some products, probably not all products. And you've got to have a bit of exclusivity around it potentially as well. It can't be so much of an entry level product. No one's going to kind of wait list for an entry level product. So you've got to kind of take those things into account, I guess, with that strategy. But beyond that, we're using the same audience that we've got, so we can very much kind of sneak peek the release and say, hey, it's coming up this date. Why don't you make sure that you've put that in your calendar, so to speak, or earmark that product for gifting purposes. Obviously, the earlier you do it, the better when it comes to a gifting season. But if the product's not for gifting, then you're pretty much going to be trying to use some other calendar or event to launch your product to kind of, as I say, kind of stand on the back of giants. If it is a female product, maybe you want to launch around Valentine's Day, for instance, so that you're not launching just a random calendar day of the month. You're actually using something that's already got momentum to build your product with.
Okay, that's really cool. That's really interesting. I want to take a step back though, because I think your first answer just opened up a lot more questions for us, I think. So you said you're hiring more people. You've already hired, and I'm assuming you're also looking to hire more as you keep on going, right? Because you need more people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice? Because I'm doing the same thing in my business. I'm hiring a lot of people right now. Do you have any advice that you can give me right now, anyone who's listening, on like hiring, forming, and then retaining a good team? Because I think retention is also a huge issue right now.
I could talk a whole episode on this. This is probably the thing that I've learned the most over the last 12 months or so. And it's somewhat, I would say, about the planning process. I used to go into the process of hiring employees and really just look at it individually and try and find that person that can be a bit of a chameleon. If it doesn't work out in one strategy I have, then they can jump to other areas of the business. And I think that really works when you're wearing multiple hats and, it's a small team and everyone needs to be quite flexible and responsive. But as you grow, there's the desire to keep this kind of flat management structure. And I think that really breaks down at a certain level. I can't have 15 people reporting to me in the organization because I won't get anything done. I won't get my planning done. I won't get my strategy done. I won't get my investor relations done. Whatever it is that's super important for me for that kind of 18-month, 3-year horizon, there's no chance in hell I'm going to get that done if I'm always responding to requests from my staff. So I think that management structure really is important, and something that I've learned really over the last kind of 3 to 6 months is planning out the organizational chart. So we went through a kind of a performance chart for the next 3 years, and that had all our goals for 3 years, plus the the departments and the department leads and the teams and the team leads and everyone underneath those people. And that really gave us a good idea of who's going to be the leader in the organization, how the leadership structure is going to work, how the alignment on the goals and the company objectives is going to kind of filter down through the organization to everyone that has a touch point on it.
So one thing you said was very interesting is the fact that your desire to maintain a flat structure is also a detriment to the growth of the business, right? How do you, like, for you at least, because I know that this is not going to be relevant for every business out there, but how did you identify that spot where you said, okay, this is no longer feasible, this is no longer efficient. I can still do it, but I'm leaving a lot on the table. I'm basically hurting my business by doing this. Where was that spot for you?
Mentally, that spot was defining my own role as a CEO, and that was really focusing on the financial health of the business, the long-term objectives, the key milestones that we need to achieve, hiring the right people to be able to steer the ship. I felt like as a very early on entrepreneur, you feel like you need to do everything and you need to make every decision. And if something doesn't go the way you planned, then it rests on your shoulders. And now the mentality and the kind of thought process has shifted more towards setting the right framework, setting the right vision and mission, and identifying the type of people and the culture that is going to achieve that mission and that vision.
We had a really good chat with with Jonathan, so from Deskimo, so a co-working space guy. We had a big discussion about the Great Resignation and how people nowadays are looking for different ways to work. Some people don't even want to work anymore, and even with the businesses that I work with, they're finding it harder and harder to find key talent. Are you having the same issues?
Yeah, we are. We're not immune to that at all. I think if you're looking for staff nowadays, previously I'm talking a couple of years ago, it was somewhat easy to hire staff without a really well-defined process. I think nowadays staff are looking for companies that not only pay them what they're worth, but culturally or significantly aligned with their aspirations as people. And that's why I think that the vision and the mission is crucial in that onboarding and that recruitment process. Staff are looking for that flexibility. They're looking for working from home, but they're also looking for challenging environments and goals that somewhat seem impossible to achieve. They want to be part of something great, and they want to kind of leave their mark and say, you know what, even if my role was just a tiny slither, I can see that, my team and my department made this idea into a behemoth of a company, and thousands of people are using it around the world, and it's kind of making lives better every day. So they really want to be part of that big story. And that's, a conversation they can have with their friends at a cafe or whatever it might be. It doesn't need to be more than that, really. I think it is just how they want to communicate their position in a company and what that company is working on. If it comes down to, I'm working for a accounting firm, and last year we made our partners each $300,000 in profit. That doesn't really move the needle for people anymore. I think that they're looking for the fast-paced growth environment. And there are a lot of startups, and thankfully the Australian kind of startup landscape and investing landscape has changed a lot in the last 10 years, where there's significant investment and resources going into fast growth businesses out of Australia. So no longer do they need to look at the American companies and say, oh, I wish if I had an opportunity to work at Google or Uber HQ or whatever it might be. I think that's happening now in Australia, and that's what this kind of great resignation or great movement of people, they're looking for different things now.
Nice. That actually provides a perfect transition, because you recently got backing from Gandil Invest, yeah? I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's a multi-part question, right? So do you have any advice for anyone looking for funding? Because I think we're always on the lookout for money, probably not to return anything to investors, we just want money. But for the others who are actually looking for to get proper investor returns. Secondly, what reasons should you look out for? Should you look for investors? Like why should you look for investors? And then just very briefly, like how you went about it. Was this something that was really easy because you kind of knew the investment game, you already had context there? Or is it something that you had to kind of start from scratch?
I'll answer your third question first. So yeah, I didn't know anyone in the startup investment space, apart from the contacts that I had at a co-working space that I was running around 2012, 2013, but to 2014. So around the time I was kind of working in my agency and had the initial ideas for Whisky Loot. I was doing the co-working space as well. So I had people from the startup world, but not necessarily from the investor landscape. I think if you want to be looking for the question was, why should you be looking for money? That really comes down to the growth objectives and also the style of business you want to run. If it's a lifestyle business that you want to minimize the amount of hours that you're working, and you want to have something that pays you more than a salaried employment, then don't look for investors. You need to obviously figure out how you can make that profitable based on cash flow, and obviously there are means and strategies to be able to do that. But investors are looking for a return, and that's most likely not going to come from a lifestyle-based business. If you're in a situation where you can project a big market opportunity, and you can project the fact that you have, I guess, the understanding of the levers that you control in order to achieve or get close to that opportunity, then definitely approach investors. It's never easy. The first round is going to be the most difficult. They're most likely at the end of the day not going to take a bet on the business. They're going to take a bet on the founders. But the founders need to be represented by their business, if that makes sense. So you can't approach a investor with a terrible looking deck and a sloppy financial model. Even though you might be the best salesperson in the world, your business is going to do the selling as well as you.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting insight, because I think a lot of people who when they give advice or when they get investment, they kind of look at it from a very a more cynical perspective, versus the way you look at it, right? So it's very factual, but it's also an understanding of how you really want your business to grow. So I think that's really fascinating, because I work with startups a lot, and investors tend to be, at least the way that they see investment can sometimes be a bit cold and kind of say it's just a means. It's a very quick means to the end, and kind of like dipping into the, versus actually having a clear idea of how the money is going to be used, where the vision of the company grows, and how that fits into your personal vision of the brand as well.
What do you mean that they're cold?
Well, so, and it's less so nowadays, but because I'm based in Singapore, and then Southeast Asia is where most of the investments I see. During the Wild Wild West of that time, there was just a ton of money being pumped into the region, because it was the fastest growth region, but there wasn't a lot of understanding how that money was going to be properly. It's basically people were just literally grabbing the money as much as possible versus actually trying to create a business from it. It was like, how much money can we get? How quickly can we get it? It doesn't matter about the equity we get, because it's literally just money. I mean, I don't even know if you should share this story, so I'll decide whether we take this out later. But
Sure.
There was actually a brand, there's a startup brand here that took about 25 mil in funding. For some reason, the investors didn't actually check very well on what they were doing with the money, and they were paying the entire C-suite like, I think, $300,000 to $400,000 a year in salary. So that money started, that 25 mil started disappearing, and there was literally no change in the company. There was no growth. There was nothing. It was literally just money being pumped out through salary, and there was no checks and balances. And this happened not that long ago, just before the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. The company's gone under now. It was crazy, because I actually know the company. I knew the people doing it, so it was kind of crazy.
Right. I don't think you need to get to the point where you know every dollar that's being spent from a financial, from a use of funds perspective. Obviously, there needs to be contingencies, and there needs to be an understanding that that financial model that you've spent months working on is actually not as accurate as you think it is. But there's, I guess, an understanding that the money is going to be spent on the right things. And I think that's also empowering employees and the team to understand what those right things are. Because a lot of the time, employees might have a great idea, but they might think, oh, you know what? This is going to cost $200 a month in software. So I'm not going to raise this with my superior, and I'm just going to do it my way. And they end up spending 10 hours a week on it for the next year. And you're like, why didn't I just spend $200 a month on this software? So you kind of need to empower your employees to make the right decisions when it comes to budget, and to understand that there are resources available as long as there's efficiencies being made. Obviously, if your employees hear that you've done a capital raise in the press before they've heard it from you as the CEO, then that can kind of deteriorate trust. And if you don't communicate where that money's being spent, I think that can kind of make people a little bit disillusioned with their role and what they what value they're bringing to the organization as well.
That's interesting, and I think that's really good insight into what's going on. It's tricky. I worked in a lot of funded companies before that. I worked with a lot of funded companies as well, and you don't often see a very clear line of communication. Just on your last point, you don't see a clear line of communication with the funders have, which to me is a massive issue because you need the trust of your employees, especially if you're quite small. Imagine like if half your employees don't know what's going on, they're going to be shocked if they don't hear.
No, absolutely.
That's pretty interesting, man. Dave,
I really like your line about communication. Even if the smaller size businesses, if people aren't aligned with, what do you want, what the vision of the company is, it just seems to happen a lot. You just have to keep consistent, with communicating. This is the path we're going. Don't be afraid to come up with ideas, but as long as it's in line with whatever our mission is or whatever our vision is. I'd like to talk about liquor. Working in the industry.
The greatest transition in podcast history.
I think it's the greatest transition in any conversation.
That's the great thing about marketing communication. Yes, liquor.
That should be the headline for our website.
Let's talk about liquor. What do you think? I don't really want to talk about geek out on whiskey again, actually. But before that, what do you think needs to improve in the liquor industry? Because your model is very different.
There's a couple of different things, and I think one of the things that we solve is obvious. So I won't kind of get into that. That's kind of the try before you buy and education element of understanding spirits. I think it's happened in wine for a long time and hasn't really happened in spirits. And the roadblock to that is the fact that this bottle costs $300. But if I'm going to be breaking it down into 60 or 30 ml glasses, then it's a lot more accessible, and it's the same thing, right? It's the same liquid. So I think distilleries right now, if you're kind of asking what needs to be improved in the liquor industry, I think distilleries and the owners and head distillers, or kind of even if they're not head distillers, the people that are creating the distilleries, and there are a lot of startup distilleries nowadays, are really in the phase of make it and they will come. And that is a very old school methodology of business. And it comes down to more of a commodity industry than, say, a startup focused on tech, for instance. So the make it and they will come stage is exactly as it sounds. They're building a distillery. They're going out and they're forking out potentially millions of dollars to build a distillery. And they're sitting on that cash flow, and they're sitting on those outgoings for 2 to 3 years before the whiskey has matured, because you can't legally sell it as whiskey if it hasn't matured in a barrel for that long. So I think what we're actually trying to do is educate the distillers as much as we're educating the consumers and providing the feedback and the trends about what people are saying about particular spirits back to those distillers to help with their new product development. So at the end of the day, they're not going to be spending that amount of money and committing those resources before they know the market, the audience, what type of flavor profile they're going after, and they've got a really good understanding of that kind of persona in the industry.
That's really interesting, because I think one thing that we always forget is the fact that feedback is really important in every industry, but it doesn't seem to be happening that much in the more traditional alcohol type industries, where they kind of just have a product and that product is what they put there, right? Maybe less so in beer and a few other places, but I would say most alcohol producers, distillers, to be very traditional. Have you seen like what's on the horizon when it comes to liquor, or like any specific alcohol that's kind of going to be the next big thing, or have its 15 minutes in the next, like, for 2022?
I think that the thing that's having its 5 minutes of fame, and it is to be determined whether that is a 2-year fad or a 50-year fad, or not a fad at all, is the non-alc spirits.
Okay.
So I think I think their technology around kind of circular distilling is getting better, and the flavor profiles are getting better. But there's still something missing from a actual product perspective, and that actually might be kind of the somewhat of the high that you get, from drinking, and that kind of
I didn't want to say that, but
that benefit.
I didn't realize there's a benefit
Kind
of the
of
high.
that functional benefit, and I think even in the States, and it might take a while for it to get here, but you have a few cannabis infused alcohols. So cannabis infused non-alc could be quite an interesting market where you're actually getting the functional benefit, but you're not having the alcohol component. So I would definitely keep my eye out for that. Definitely an interesting space. I don't know whether it's going to be a full-blown industry. There's a lot of players in it right now that are receiving quite a bit of funding. How long it lasts, I think, will come down to the tech and how good it tastes. I think right now people are quite forgiving on the flavor profile because it's non-alc, but they might not be as forgiving on the price. If you have to pay $26 for a non-alc G&T that's essentially gin, well, fake gin, not real gin and tonic, so it's just bubbly water.
Yeah.
So I think that the price and the value hasn't quite been figured out yet, but economics will figure itself out at the end of the day.
Yeah, because I don't think you can actually charge the same price, especially in a lot of different markets where alcohol is taxed very differently from non-alcoholic, right? So non-alcoholic drinks won't be taxed in the same way.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to call out anyone. I always find it confusing because there are a few non-alcoholic brands in the market right now, and they're selling it at it's comparable to alcohol pricing. It's a little bit under, I would say, but it's comparable to alcohol pricing, which confuses me because I know they're not being taxed the same.
Exactly.
So yeah,
so a full bottle of spirit, no matter what the value, if it's a cheap bottle or expensive bottle, a 700 ml bottle will have kind of $35 worth of alcohol excise tax in Australia. So if you see that bottle on the shelf for $41.99, then you can kind of guess how much is actually going to the retailer, what the margin is for them, what the actual product cost when it was imported. Some of these bottles that are landing on the shore, and they're real alcohol, but they're just mass-produced brands. A couple of pounds. By the time they get here, it's $30 or $40, maybe $50 for that entry-level bottle. So to see those similar prices and have no tax to pay, it doesn't really stack up. And I think it's only a matter of time until the market kind of understands that is not cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, I agree with you. It's such a lot to take in, though.
You think it's a branding thing? Like they want people to feel as though they bought alcohol. It's kind of like eating tofu meat. It's like
But it just depends on how long that will last, because you can only do that for a certain amount of time until people catch on, right? Like branding maybe adds 50% of the value, but it doesn't add
intrinsic value.
5x the value,
I mean, it's been happening like for years, right? With certain brands like Apple, for example. Come on now, it's like it should be 40% of the price.
You're clearly an Android user.
Diamonds, ridiculous price. Yeah, no, I'm not an Apple fan. Diamonds, you're paying thousand times the actual price of it, right?
You sound like a better boyfriend.
And then there's
differences
angry,
where diamonds have like a supply and demand curve,
yeah,
right? Like
that's true.
That's somewhat controlled. Apple have a lot of R&D and a lot of other additional expenses that go behind the scenes. And Apple is Apple. They're somewhat of commodity in themselves because no one is competing with that price point of Apple. Obviously, they're competing outside of that with different features, but it is somewhat of a Apple is Apple type of communication.
I'm just noting that there are Apple users on this podcast.
They're buying it for the perception, and they're buying it for that personality connection, which is all around brand. So I think as more and more competitors enter the non-alc space, because it's cheaper to produce and there's no taxes, it's somewhat of a commodity again. So that appeal, when the market is flooded, will reduce the price.
Joel, do you think you'll ever include non-alc your subscription model?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think there's still a point of allowing people to taste and to reduce the risk of buying something they wouldn't like. So as much as personally I might not be into them right now anyway, I would definitely not rule them out in the future, because I think they are part of the spirits market, because they're a alternative that is marketed to the same audience for the same reason.
That'll be the day when I taste non-alcoholic whiskey. That'll be strange. Some black label non-alcoholic.
But one caveat to that: we would never send non-alc to someone that wants whiskey. So they would definitely be different subscriptions.
Have you seen the data behind non-alc? Is there actually a demand for it, or is it? Do people actually drink it?
I haven't seen the data. I've only really just read the articles that says there's a growing demand for it. So I don't know what they're kind of referring to specifically. But based on the empirical evidence of just looking at other brands that are receiving astronomical valuations and rounds of investment, I would say there's got to be some form of demand backing that up. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a Ponzi scheme.
Quick thing there, though. Do you think that this before we kind of get off the topic of non-alcoholics, because you don't even supply that, but it's a fascinating topic for me at least. Because a lot of the demand or the perceived demand for non-alcoholics is really driven by the beer industry, because they're the ones who kind of got into it first, right? They've been really strong into the zero alcohol beers. Yeah. I mean, their marketing dollars of beer companies is crazy, right? So they're basically spending millions and millions of dollars pushing this. Do you think that's just driving interest without there being a real, maybe not real interest, but they're inflating the size of the industry at the moment?
Potentially of the non-alc industry as a whole. I think we'd probably look at non-alc wine, non-alc beer, and non-alc spirits. So we'd kind of look at it, dividing those three up. From a macro level, definitely, I think the beer is probably influencing everything, but that's probably more from an education perspective and market perception, and understanding that non-alc can be a thing. I think beer has done a good job in the flavor profile. I've tasted a couple of non-alc beers, and they're not too bad. And I think that's much more difficult when it comes to spirits, because it's not just the flavor, but it's the mouthfeel, and that is a massive component of it. If you drink something that tastes like whiskey, but it goes down like water, that's not necessarily what the full flavor experience should have been if it was the real thing, right? So I think it's much more difficult when it comes to spirits than, say, beer or wine.
That's true. It is. And you're right. They've done beer. Beer's done a pretty good job. I've had a lot of non-alcoholic beer.
Oh, you've tried it?
Very close beer. Yeah, everyone. Heineken has it. Every single big beer brand has non-alcoholic. Sorry, Dave, man. You got a question? I think it's your turn.
Yeah. Going out of that topic for a little bit, is there anything in hindsight now that I can see that you've changed also as a person and throughout this time. Is there anything you do differently running Liquor Loot from the start? Is there anything after everything you've learned, after everything you've gone through? Are there any key differences that you would have done if you had the chance to do it again?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight at the end of the day is a great thing, right? I would say scaling faster and understanding the market opportunity, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't kind of take it slow to start with, and really focusing on the team and the product, and preparing ourselves for growth. I think now our focus has kind of shifted from, I guess, looking at growth as something that we need to build up our capabilities. Something that we're constantly building up our capabilities to meet, instead of planning that growth and building our capabilities before we get there, so that when we get there, our customers have a great experience, and that the product continues to grow and evolve. I think right now, if I kind of look at the past versus look at the future, the past was very much around having that growth behind us and pushing us forward. And I think right now it's having the growth in front of us and really being ahead of it, in terms of our preparation, and understanding that it is a opportunity and it is an industry that's growing and it's a product people love. And in order to scale, we need to invest ahead of that growth. We need to make sure that our infrastructure and our capabilities and our team are the right people and right infrastructure, so that we can achieve that growth as we anticipate.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's a good way of looking at it as well, because that's maturity in a company, right? It's very different in different stages of growth of the company. Hey, Joe, I think we're running a little bit short of time, but we do want to ask you a couple more questions before we let you go. These are standard questions we ask a lot of the really interesting people we get on our podcast. But do you have like 3 books that kind of like impacted the way it could be your life, could be your business, could be anything? The 3 books that you can share with our readers?
There are a couple of books I'm reading now, which are quite interesting, and I think the ones that I've read in the past have definitely served their purpose. They're probably a little bit more around advertising and branding. Maybe some of the more famous books. So some of them will probably already been mentioned on this podcast, but the ones that I'm looking at now and kind of getting some inspiration from, in terms of copywriting. I'm really interested in copywriting. I'm more interested in it than I was at the beginning of my kind of journey, and that's the Boron letters, BORON. If anyone has heard of that. On top of that, right now I'm quite fascinated around company culture. So there's a book called the Culture Code. It's something like The Secrets of Highly Successful Groups. So that's quite interesting as well. And something that Brian Chesky from Airbnb read, and I read a little bit of a review that he read this, and I was interested in it as well. It's called Blitz Scaling. So it's very much around kind of what a company should look at different stages of growth.
I haven't heard of any of those books. So that's
that's really interesting. Yeah. We'll put our links for all this in our show notes. We've actually got a section specifically for books, so businessover.com/books. So all the recommendations from all our guests and really interesting insights, because to be fair, Dave and I combined, we've read books, but not a lot. And usually they're quite simple.
Picture books, C-Spot Run. I read that the other night.
Comics.
Oh, I've got a lot of picture books I'm reading. That's not for me.
Can I have them? Yeah, okay. Before we finish, I want to get back to talking about liquor. Are there any whiskies you're nerding on about at the moment, or fanboying over at the moment? Like any interesting whiskies you want to talk about?
To be honest, the funny thing about COVID is we're all working from home. So I've had to pass on my whiskey selection duties to another person in the team. So the last couple of months in particular, especially after my little daughter was born, have not as been whiskey induced as I would have hoped for. I'm still a massive fan of rye whiskies, and also kind of whiskies from interesting countries. There's a whiskey out of Israel that I've got on my shelf, which is quite interesting at the moment. So I think I just like exploring different areas, and seeing what comes in from the Liquor Loot HQ. I'm constantly trying new things, but probably not as much in the last couple of months as I would usually have.
So based on sales or interest, what's some of the most popular spirits you have?
Aussie and Japanese are still kind of number one for us, and I think Aussies like to support Aussies, and Japanese whiskey is very much a continual and increasing trend. So we're seeing more Japanese brands pop up, and even if we bring in something that, costs $1,500 a bottle, it sells out pretty quickly. So I think just getting your hands on it is super interesting for those collectors out there. It's a rare commodity, but for the entry level, it's not as rare, and it can still be quite high quality.
Nice. Okay. I mean, my question actually was kind of centered around that as well, because I was trying to think, like, do you have any favorite Asian whiskeys right now?
Kavalan.
Okay,
You
Taiwanese,
guys
yeah?
have Kavalan?
Yeah,
Taiwanese, yeah.
yeah. Okay, very cool. Yeah, Kavalan's very interesting. They actually won a major award a few years ago. The I think the World Whiskey awards. That's pretty cool. Hey, Dave, do you want to take us out, man? Because I think we're coming to the end.
Yes, just to wrap up, 2 major life lessons that others that may benefit from. So anything that you've learned in your journey, whether in life or whether in business, or you think that you could share that some people could possibly benefit from tonight?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this before the call, and it was very much around hiring, and that's something I've kind of been really passionate about in the last couple of months, and processes as well. So first is no one is a born great interviewer. I think as entrepreneurs, one of the struggling areas is getting good staff on board, and that kind of starts with a good interview. And I don't think it's something that comes naturally. Obviously, you can wing it, and that has mixed results. So I wouldn't be too hard on yourself if you kind of make early mistakes hiring the wrong people. Just kind of move on and continue to learn and grow. Read as much as you can online and get a real good understanding of the process that works for you, the questions that you like to ask, and kind of what steps you want to go through in that interview process instead of saying yes on the first interview.
You're talking about an employee as a boss interviewing someone to hire, right?
Exactly, yeah. And then you asked me two, sorry. So the second one is around systems and processes. And that's something that I hadn't really done for the first couple of years of the business. And as we kind of bring on additional staff, there's a lot more interest from them on company policies. And when I first heard that term, I was like, what? We're a startup. We don't have company policies. But you actually do need them, and they do make life a lot easier for everyone. So documenting your ideas around policy kind of, I think, starts with your cultural identity, your cultural values, and the behaviors you want. And then from there, you can kind of build out those policies. And a little bit of a neat trick is using something like Notion to build out, certain pages for those policies. And then obviously kind of trying to communicate them and group them together in different categories so that people can click through and see, say, what the the vacation policy is, or what the policy around hiring is. What are the steps that we do to hire people, so that at the end of the day, it's not just you that needs to be involved in every decision. People can be empowered to read the policy and take charge and follow that, and know that you're not going to be upset with the outcome if you wrote the policy.
Yeah, I don't think back to the first point, I don't think I ever got the interviewing process right. Like, I found that when I interviewed people, they're different people from when you interview them to when they actually start working. It's a big challenge.
Yeah. And the recent thing that I'm kind of thinking around hiring is kind of the try before you buy method. So if you can try and get someone that can, say, be freelance, and then after a month or so doing freelance, they can do a 6-month contract. And then after a 6-month contract, then you can offer them the full-time role. So that type of thing isn't something that you can copy, or it's potentially around hiring quickly and firing fast. So making sure you have those KPIs that first couple of months, and you really understand what it is that you're measuring that person on, and you have a probation period kind of built into the contract so that you can get out of it quickly. Or obviously, if it's more of important, maybe leadership quality role, then making sure that you're doing a very exhaustive interview process and reference check, and maybe even personality test as well to make sure they're a fit.
I'm the worst interviewer in the world, so I'm taking notes on this. I really suck at interviews. Sometimes I just forget.
Oh, it's one of the
hardest
things as an entrepreneur. You just want to be like, you're awesome.
Are you good?
Come work for me.
Question
Come join
one.
this company. And then you're like, oh.
Question one, are you good?
Yeah, I mean,
Question
honestly,
two, will you work for free?
Yeah, those are some of the questions. Like, how do you rate your skill set? Good? Awesome.
You're
All
hired.
right, cool. So check.
Will you work for free?
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
okay.
yeah. That's Dave's criteria usually. It's all based around money. So I've noticed that. Oh, hey, Joel, thanks so much for coming.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Joel, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. I think this was really, really interesting. I think we kind of went off the rails a little bit with the non-alcoholic stuff, but I think that was really cool.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, insights here were really interesting. I think a lot of it kind of resonated well with me as well, which is, to me, all that matters. I don't care about our listeners and I don't care about Dave or anyone else. So it's cool as long as I got something out of it. That's what matters. But anyway,
That's why anyone does a podcast, right?
Exactly.
Pretty much. This is the audio way of smelling your fart. Joel, do you want to share anything at the or do you want any last words before we take us out of here?
So if anyone wants more information on what we do or how we do it, check out whiskyloot.com or ginloot.com. And scroll down to the bottom to check out the jobs that we're hiring for as well. There's going to be quite a few roles coming up over the next couple of months, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah, awesome.
Nice. We'll put that all in the show notes. So to find us and to actually check out the show notes and to find out all the great interviews that we've done, go to businessoverdrinks.com or find us on all social media plus all major platforms, podcast platforms, and just search for Business Over Drinks. We always show up because we picked a really cool name.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks, Joel. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks
I mean, we since the 10 months, I can notice a difference. I love maybe in 12 months we'll get you back and we'll see what things are like then. You'll be a dad of a 1-year-old by then.
Yeah, well, that's scary.
It is not the terrible twos or the worst. All right, guys. Thanks so much. And everyone have a great evening.